there, you're listening to the Pursue Your Spark podcast. My name is Heike Gates, and on this show we talk about how to unlock your potential in your fitness lifestyle with tips, strategies, and interviews to help you create the life you love. Today's show is sponsored by the 4-week Lean Out program. I created the 4-week Lean Out program using a combination of proven scientific steps and my own personal experience in fitness and nutrition. The results are an incredible 4-week system based on the Spark method that will help you show how you can lean out in midlife like a boss. The Spark method helps you scan your life and assess what holds you back to achieve your goals. We then plan a bold journey by gaining clarity on the changes you want to make. We amplify those changes and your power by creating a tangible plan to move forward. And of course, we're going to rock your roadblocks and then kick ass and design a new lifestyle. And in my training, I will show you how intermittent fasting strategies, counting macros, and effective workouts can help you lean out in simply 4 weeks. The next training starts March 4th and will help you get ready for the spring vacation. The link to get on the waiting list for the next 4-week Lean Out program is in the show notes. So don't miss out and check it out. Well, hi there, and welcome to the Pursue Your Spark podcast, episode number 37 of the Women on the Move segment. And today's guest is my friend Loretta Sayers. I came across Loretta's blogs on Facebook, and her stories just captured my heart with their honesty and openness, and I couldn't stop reading her stories. Her life unfolded right in front of my eyes. One thing that fascinated me about Loretta was how she survived so many difficult situations in her life and learned so much along the way. But I want you to listen to her incredible stories yourself. Are you ready to be blown away? Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Pursue Your Spark podcast. I am so excited that on my segment, Women on the Move, I have another amazing life to share with you. And this life I'm sharing with you today is Loretta Sayers. She's an introspective adventurer. So she also says she's aging on her own terms. Now hold on to your seats. She's a mother, wife, writer, photographer, organizer, manager, blogger, wanderer, event planner. Loretta is a Better After 50 influencer. She's also the creator and the mastermind behind the Countdown to 60 blog. And this blog is dedicated to all 50-something-year-old women out there who may feel the same way she does, and that she says, someday we're going to be 60. Someday. So welcome to the show, Loretta. I'm so glad that you're here.
Thank you, Heike. I'm so glad to be here too. And I appreciate you putting up with me being sick for a few weeks and pushing back our podcast we were trying to do. But now I'm better and ready to have this podcast with you. So I'm very excited. Thank you.
So guys, if you would have seen her, the last picture I saw of her was with a face mask. And I'm like, wait a minute, we're going to wait a little bit with this one. So I'm so glad you're feeling better and sound good too.
Thank you. I am too. So happy.
Awesome. So I've been saying this, and I keep saying this. I meet all these amazing women just like Loretta on the internet. You know, when you think internet, it's about dating, but I met Loretta on the internet.
We met online. Yeah, Heike, you were great. You actually discovered me first, and you found my blog and started commenting on my Facebook page and my blog right away. And I was like, who's this Heike lady? She's just right in there liking all my stuff. I love her.
Yeah, this was like, and that's how we got connected. And then you started your Insta Over 50 group, which we'll talk a little bit more later. And you're such a good mentor and sharer, and it was just a pleasure being in that group with other women that you have organized. I just love being there. So this was such a awesome story.
Well, it was great to find you online, and that was the whole purpose, is to find like-minded women our age or around our age, because it's great to make friends at this time in our life, new friends, and I'm finding that's the best part about my online experience for sure.
Yeah. Now, you are a blogger, and what drew me to your writing is that it's super manageable to read. I don't sit down for long. I am very fidgety when it comes to reading. But I just love the stories you're telling. And you told me that you call this flash nonfiction.
That's right. I'm like you. I actually love to read and want to read as much as I can, but find when I see a big block of text or, 1,500 or 2,000 or more words, I immediately start to back up like, oh, this may be more than I want to commit to this time, which is what, like 5 minutes or something. So we only want to commit to a small amount. And it worked for me to decide from the very beginning that my blog posts were going to be somewhere around 500 words. Mm-hmm. It takes a minute to read, and we all have that time to just read a little bit, and it's nonfiction. There's stories about my life and my experiences, and so there's the flash nonfiction and where that came from.
Okay, because when you explained it to me, I said, I have to share this with our listeners because I've never heard that term, flash nonfiction.
Right. Yeah, I kind of stole it. I know there's flash fiction out there, and so it's basically short stories, and I thought, well, all of my stories are bite-sized pieces and in the blog format, and hopefully we'll grow into something more one day, which we'll talk about.
Well, I have such a hard time writing. I really struggle with this. I mean, yes, English is my second language, but how did you get started writing? What compels you to write? It's like, I don't sit down. I'm not a big journaler to just spill my guts. So what compels you to write?
I have been journaling for most of my life, and I never, ever, ever have considered myself a writer. I just felt like I had something to say. And so perhaps that's part of it, is if you have something to say and you can string some words together, there you are, you're a writer. And what compelled me to start my blog and start really writing for an audience was, like I think I've told you before, I woke up one day in July of 2017, and I said, all of a sudden I was like, I'm going to be 60. And it just was like, oh, it just seems so big. So I know, isn't that funny that it does though? And I Googled it and asked Google how many days until my 60th birthday, and it came back 666, which is funny because I considered it a beast.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought, what better way to tame this beast than to just tackle it head on and try to figure out who I am. And that's why I started writing. It was purely selfish. It was just a moment in my life that I said, I got to start writing and telling my story and being honest. And I've told my story verbally many times, and I always have left out certain details or changed certain things because I was afraid of how I'd be perceived. And I decided on this blog, I was going to be 100% completely honest. And that's been quite a task.
Yeah. Would you like to share some of it with our listeners?
Sure, I definitely could. I talk about how I grew up in Michigan and I have a large family. And I think that's when I've spoken to friends and people and sort of told that part of my story. They're like, wow, you should write a book. And that was nothing compared to some of the other things. But I'll read something short. Like I said, all of them are short. And this is just part of one that I wrote a long time ago, right when I first started the blog.
Cool.
The first day of sixth grade stands out clearly. It was a month after our mom died, and I think I was nervous about getting ready for school without mom's help. I'm not sure if my sister fixed my hair or if I did. I don't recall what I was wearing. What I do remember was my classmates and I were mingling around, and all of a sudden, Jerry Snyder was talking to me. Jerry Snyder. In my mind, he was one of the popular kids, and I was not. He came up to me and said, "I saw in the paper that your mom died. I'm sorry." I just looked at him and couldn't really speak. Then he said, "You sure have a lot of brothers." He smiled at me and then just acted like we had always been friends. It was a wonderful way to start sixth grade. The other memory of that school year wasn't such a good one. I was doing the best I could to feel normal, even though things weren't normal in my world. We were already the poor family. Now we were the poor kids without a mom. Making friends was challenging for me. I was getting close to one girl, and honestly, I don't remember her name now. We would play together on the playground and chat at lunchtime, and in my mind, she was my best friend. Until one day in gym class. We were playing some kind of ball game, and she got mad at me for something I did wrong. She started yelling at me to do it right, and I probably said something stupid back, like I am. That's when the words came out of her mouth that I will always remember. She yelled, "You are the reason your mom is dead."
Oh.
I stood there frozen. How did she know? How did she know I was supposed to be taking care of my mom the week before she died, and I complained about it? Of course, she didn't know any of those things. Those are just the thoughts that ran through my head. She also didn't mean it. They were just words that flew out from her mouth to get my attention. But that day changed my feelings about friendships. I know I had a few close friends, but I also kept a distance. I think that made me seem like I wasn't friendly. So that was just me spilling my beans.
It's so like I have goosebumps just sitting here. So anybody who watches the video, because of course we have a video for you guys, not just the audio. I'm having goosebumps just listening to Loretta. I'm sure you do too. It's such an honest retake or recalling of your story and your emotions. And
Thank you. I found when I was trying to figure out sort of my path and who I am, that the things that are told to us when we're growing up, when we're little, we put inside, and so some of these things we just declare that's who we are. Yeah. We declare that this what this person said is truth, and I'm going to own it, and it's who I am. And then we get to midlife, or hopefully sooner for a lot of other people. For me, midlife, I started to question all of those beliefs, and writing them down and saying them out loud has been such an amazing journey for myself. And I've cried, and I've typed just bawling sometimes, and my husband sees me, he's like, "Are you okay?" It's like, I just have to keep typing. Words have come out that I didn't know were there. I have experienced things that have just been unbelievable, and it's all because of just starting to tell my story.
So growing up with 14 brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
How was life back then? The 14 of you. You said you grew up poor, so create a picture for us what that would look like.
Well, I was second to the youngest. So most of I'll say half of my siblings were older and gone. My oldest sister is 16 years older than me. Oh, wow. And she had left home by then. Most of us left home by 15 or 16, which I find interesting. Yeah. But my father was married previously, and he had some of my siblings are half siblings. Okay. And then my mother was also married previously. So we're the yours, mine, and ours group. And, but we never think of anyone in our family would never say half brother or half sister. It's just, we were raised to be siblings. Okay. Mm-hmm. But we grew up on a farm, and it was really wonderful. We had the farm life, we had the animals, and grew up organic just by accident because my dad couldn't afford to buy all the chemicals you'd need. So we were the ones working the fields and weeding and debugging, by hand, because that's what we did. So it was a great way to grow up. I do have to say, I did love growing up in Michigan.
Oh, awesome. But then you left also, how old were you when you left? 15, 16 as well?
I did. I left home my mother died when I was 11. And I left home, my father's home, when I was 15. Crazy, huh? And I lived in Michigan, and I finished high school. And when I was 18, decided that I needed out of Michigan. It was 1978, and one of the worst snowstorms in Michigan history hit. And I was like, that's it. I'm out of here.
I can
And
imagine. So what were you looking for when you left?
just a new life, just something different. I had no clue, honestly. And in a roundabout way, and you can read about it in my blog, I ended up in Oregon.
Right.
And I ended up living in Oregon for 32 years. That's where I ended up marrying and meeting my husband and having my two sons and raising them also on a little farm,
Mm-hmm.
and then ultimately getting a divorce after 18 years to that man. So Oregon has a big warm spot in my heart as well.
Being by yourself so young, how did you keep yourself afloat financially? What did you do? Because I know, and the listeners don't know that you're doing so many things. It just blows my mind. But at that time, you're so young. How did you keep yourself afloat financially?
I was so lucky. Living in a small town, there was a little cafe downtown that two sisters ran, and I became the waitress there, and they rented me an apartment upstairs. And the great thing about that was I got to eat there. So I got my food for free, and I made enough money to be able to afford to continue to go to school. And I have fallen back as a waitress job many times when I needed immediate cash, because that's something you can do, and get money in your hand today.
Uh-huh. And you met your husband during that time, your first husband?
No, I didn't meet my first husband until I moved to Oregon.
Okay.
So when I moved to Oregon, I started as a secretary for a builder, Mr. C. He was great. I couldn't believe my luck in finding him. And I was working for him when I met my first husband.
Okay. So
yeah.
Like I touched on a little bit, you have so many talents. You worked on a horse farm. You did something on a winery. And like a jack of all trades. You like, okay, I need to learn this. I'm going to learn this. So
I have done that, Heike. I've been one of those people that if it needs to get done, I do it. And I've never I never had parents to rely on and fall back on it and pay for anything whatsoever for me. It's always been from me. And so, necessity, as they say, and necessity was I needed to make money. And I have done numerous things. I've done waitressing. I actually was a saddle builder for, a while, and I'm definitely big into horses. I worked as a unit secretary in a hospital. I was a phlebotomist. Yeah, I know. I can't even go into all the things I've done. I just kept doing the next thing. It's like, this is what I need to do to make money. I was a realtor, a very successful realtor in Oregon for 7 years before the housing crash. And I worked as a spa manager, which was really fun to work in the beauty industry. Wow. So yeah, I've sold furniture. I've done everything.
I think that's an awesome skill to have, that you just change on a dime and you say, what do I need to do next to keep myself afloat? Which we touched on a little bit, or you touched on a little bit, is when the market crashed. Because you were hugely successful as a realtor, and then what happened?
Right. I was working at a medical spa, and trying to figure out how I was going to. I had teenage boys at home. I had a mortgage. I was like, how am I going to make ends meet? I just couldn't make enough money at the spa. And so I got my real estate license, and the very first year in real estate, I made over $100,000 in commission. And that was 2002. And it was just, I had all kinds of people say, how'd you do it? What's your secret? What formula did you use? Like, I needed to eat and my kids needed to eat. That's all the formula I have for you. So I always, in whatever I do, I try to focus on how is this going to make money, not, like you can set up your office and you can buy your cards and you can get the right program on the computer, and none of that's making money. So I was out looking for money, and I was doing really well and purchased 2 more homes. I had money in the bank. My kids were just doing really well. Everything was great. And literally overnight, I went from a 6-figure income to making about $22,000 in 1 year.
Wow.
My desk fee was $15,000. So my savings spiraled and spiraled and spiraled and spiraled, and I did everything I could to try to hang on to my homes, and I couldn't.
Was this before you got divorced or after, Loretta?
After, yeah, I was single on my own. I had, like I said, my 2 teenage boys. By the time the housing market crashed, my oldest son was gone, and my second son was on his way out the door as well to college. And so I was literally by myself, just trying to figure out how I was going to hold it all together. And I couldn't. I spent all of my savings, everything I could to try to save it all, and ultimately lost everything and had to start all over at 48 years old.
Wow, that is rough.
It was.
That is rough.
Yeah,
it's like you live the life of literally having it all, and then the rug's being pulled out from underneath you.
I did, and it was interesting. Like everyone who was going through the same thing, we were all just we were numb and trying to figure out how to deal with it all. And I remember at the certain point in my life, going through bankruptcy, doing short sales on my homes, losing everything, my car, everything. I was sitting at breakfast with my oldest son. He had come home to visit, and I was just down in the dumps. And he looked at me and he put his hand on my hand. He goes, "Mom, are you okay?" And I said, this is the worst year of my life. And then the next instant I started laughing. I could not stop laughing. I was crying. I was laughing so much. And he's like, "Oh, geez, she lost it." And I said, "I just realized if this is the worst day of my life, I am the luckiest person I've ever met." And I believe that with all of my heart. And I just said, these are things. You can take away my things. You can take away my car. You can take away all of my furniture. I don't care. You can take it all away. I still have my health. I still have my kids. I still have my friends. I still have my smile. I still have my laughter. I have everything. And I was so lucky in that moment.
That is an amazing realization, because it really is just stuff that we surround ourselves with. That is, if we don't have it, it's okay. But if you depend on it, it's not okay. But in the end, it's meaningless. What I think is always what I'm as a single mom too went through is what I was worried is like, can I put food on the table for the kids? Can I provide a roof over their head? Everything else, my kids make fun of me. They're like, "Mom, you're such a minimalist." Even now, my husband is the decorator. I'm like, we don't need to buy anything. We don't need to buy more stuff. We don't need it. And even my son now has adopted my philosophies, because now his wife is like, "That's where you got it from, your mom." I said, stuff is not making you happy. It makes you dependent. And you had such an amazing reaction with your son right there, because it's just incredible.
It does. It really, I realized that I was so busy trying to buy a box to put my stuff in. And all of a sudden it's like, I don't need the box or the stuff. I've actually, find renting. We have a smaller home now, much smaller. We have way less things. And you can see probably the most important thing to me behind me are photos. Yeah. Again, my family is what's most important, and experiences. Heike, we have changed our things into experiences, and that has been the best thing I've ever done in my life.
Well, how did you dig yourself out of the financial crisis?
Well, I lost everything, and I basically started over. I again was doing what am I going to do when I grow up? And I was 49 years old, living in Oregon. My kids had already left. And one of the things when I got a divorce is my ex-husband and we made a pact that neither of us would move while our kids were still home. So we lived literally a mile or so apart, and our kids knew we were both there. Well, now that they were gone, I thought, I'm free to go somewhere, and what can I do? And it just dawned on me one day, I really like homes, obviously, and I like being home. What could I do? And I thought, I could be a caretaker of an estate. And so why not, right? So I started scouring the internet, and every single day for about 2 months, I would get online and look from all along the coast, from Oregon all the way down to California, for a job. And a job in Napa as a caretaker showed up in my inbox at 2 a.m. Online. I was up because I was worried how was I going to do it. And I found this job and I applied for it at 2 a.m. The next morning I got up and I'm like, I hope I wrote something halfway decent. And he had already responded.
Wow.
Yeah. So they had about 300 people that had applied for that job. I was the only person that added a photo. That's tip one. And then 8 of us were given a phone interview. 5 of us were interviewed by 3 other people, and then 3 of us were interviewed by the principal. And I got the job.
Yes. Oh my God, that was a tough 300 people.
Yes,
wow.
It was. Yeah, and so through April of 2010, 2009, excuse me, I moved into my new home in Napa, and in May of 2009, I turned 50. So literally starting from nothing at 50 years old. I had an old car that was a 1986 that was paid for. I had my little dog. That's about it. So yes.
And then you moved into the mansion in Napa.
I moved into the pool house at the mansion. So yes, on my back door was a pool, and down the hill was a private tennis court. How fun is that? And the lady who I worked for was fantastic, and was only there May through September, just the summer months. The rest of the time I had the place all to myself.
How cool is that? That's what I'm saying. You're moving from nothing, dust into a Cinderella dress.
It really was. And it was such a wonderful place to recover. Yeah. She gave me such security and an opportunity to just take a deep breath and find the moments that I could recover from what I went through. And I'm so lucky I had that opportunity. It really couldn't have been better. And from there I moved that's where I met John.
That's the next question. The good-looking, sexy husband of yours.
Oh my gosh.
So from your mansion, so you met John how?
Online. Thank goodness for online dating. Yes, we met online, and he was a writer, and I had been doing some editing for my son's magazine, and so he got wind of that and asked me to look at his columns that he was doing for the Benicia Herald. And he happened to be writing about relationships and online dating, which I thought was just ironic and interesting. And we chatted for months and months, many, many hours about online dating, about men and women and relationships and how different it can be. And slowly, we became more than just friends. It took us a while.
It took a while to get there. I know I see the pictures of you guys, and you just seem to be such a good match. You're doing things you love to do together, and he deeply cares about you and you about him, of course. But it's like it shows in the photos that you share with us on social media. So you have found your match, it seems.
I really have. I'm really lucky I found John. And let me tell you, it was not easy. You guys can read about that on my blog too. I've got more to say about that. It was just like pulling teeth for us to get together, because we're both, after 50, there's so much that happens in your life, and that that you're dragging it with you into this relationship, and all the fears. And it was just almost too much for both of us, especially John. He just didn't want to get hurt again, and wanted to keep it light. Let's just be friends. But there was such an attraction from the beginning. So that part we were colliding, and it was just hard to get together. But when we finally did, it was really interesting for me, because it is definitely the first time in my life I've had a partner who truly cares about my well-being. He is always thinking about my well-being, And do I need this? And, we talked in the beginning that I was sick for 2.5 weeks. 100% took care of me. And I've never had that either. So not only do we have the fun and we have adventures together, but I have this deep love and respect for him, and he does for me. And yay. So we just need to now live till we're in our hundreds. So I can get my 30th anniversary in.
I know. So let me go back to your writing. How does your family react to your stories? I'm sure that your brothers or whoever else your kids are reading the stories. What do they think about you sharing your life that openly?
I actually, before I started the blog, I called both of my sons and I said, hey, guess what I'm going to do? And it's going to start out, I'm going to throw it all on the table from the moment I start this blog. And they both listened and said, we trust you, Mom. Whatever you need to do is what you need to do. And my daughter-in-law reads my blog, and my sons read my blog, and all of my daughter-in-law's friends read my blog, and all these other people do too, which is kind of great. But at the same time, I can't think about that. Mm-hmm. I literally can't think about who's reading it. I have to just say it's sort of like journaling. If I can just write it out, then it'll be fine. But my very first post, the way for me to just shed all of my inhibitions, so to speak, and all of my preconceived notions about myself was to post a photo in my underwear. I just decided,
I remember that. That was pretty damn daring.
Well, I did it in the beginning because I didn't have any followers, so that was safe. But I thought, we have this online persona, we have this, and I had this other photo of me as well that was super, I looked great, and it was 5 years earlier, and I was like, well, I'm going to post that. I had hair extensions in and all the makeup, and I just looked great. And so I did that, and then in conjunction was like, well, here's the other person. This is the real me, actually. And in the first photo, I was thin and I looked like I was in great shape, but I wasn't happy. Mm-hmm. And in the second photo, I put on some weight because of that darn getting married thing.
Love pounds.
Love pounds were odd. So it wasn't about that as much as it's no makeup, no nothing. This is just who I am. I'm going to represent who I am. And I'm going to start with just throwing this out there, and I got an immediate great response from people. Yeah.
Well, first, I could feel the shock a little bit, and then I'm like, oh, I like this.
Yeah. Yeah. I had friends that had seen it that I hadn't spoken to in years and years and years message me. I had strangers messaging me. I had people leaving comments that were so encouraging that I was like, oh, well, I'm just going to keep doing this then. And then I started telling my story. And I started really with my mother, because I've always been curious about my mother and her life. And then it just blossomed into here I am today.
You've gotten great recognition with your blog, and you've been published, and I forgot where, because
I have been published in Better After 50 a couple times. I've been published on Women Who Influence, or When Women Influence, I think it is. Inspire. When Women Inspire. Oh my gosh, I'll get that right. And I've been published in a few other magazines. I've been published in actually Health Monitor magazine, of all things, because it was about me having exercise-induced asthma. Yeah. And then they put me on the cover. Wow, isn't that?
Yes, that's for the time when we met. I remember that. I was like, whoa, look at her.
Yeah, that was so fun, Heike. We just had a great time. They saw my blog post, and use your SEO, everyone. And contacted me and said, we'd really love to feature your post about exercise-induced asthma. And, oh, by the way, could you do the cover model too? And I was like, yes, and yes. So I've done all of those things. I've published a couple times a story about being sexually abused as a child, which was a really tough one to tell. Again, I hadn't told anyone besides John. He was the first person I told. And then I told the world. But I did call my sons and told them, before as well. And, but yeah, I think when you have a story and you pour your heart out, people want to hear it. And that's what I've done.
People can relate to your stories also very well.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I think the excerpt that you read today is so relatable and again so honest. And I'm sure there a lot of women reached out to you and told you their stories without you even asking, because they can relate to you so incredibly.
Thank you. Yes, I've had women who've emailed me and asked, could they tell me some things they couldn't tell other people? And I said, absolutely. And I listened and I responded to every email I've ever gotten from anyone. And it breaks my heart, and it also fills my heart that I've been able to listen to other women's stories and help them, hopefully, as well.
Mm-hmm. What would you say would be one of the most difficult? You had so many difficult situations in your life, and I thought, who would in Loretta's mind be the most difficult one?
As far as things happening in my life throughout my life, really my brother dying was the worst. It was definitely the most difficult thing I've ever gone through, even more so than my mother dying. We were very, very close, and I was 21 and he was 23, and it just felt like life was just starting. So that was extraordinarily difficult, and I couldn't have talked about it for 10 years after the fact without just crying and being a mess. And my voice breaks just, to this day. So, and I wrote about that. And I think I told you earlier, in writing, I was also digging through all these old boxes and finding old photos, and it was great digging up all this stuff. I was like, wow, I've kept everything. That's the one thing I do keep, are old pictures. But in finding these old photos, I came across the newspaper clipping of my brother's death. Oh. And he died under interesting circumstances. He was accidentally electrocuted on the job. And I had a story in my head, a narrative of what happened. And I read, this happened in 1980. And in 2017, for the very first time, I read the newspaper article from beginning to end and had a complete breakdown. I started crying, and I had no idea that was what really happened. And all I kept thinking is, I wish I could go back in time and just stop my brother from what he did, how that happened. But of course we can't. And so I wrote about it. I just wrote about it.
Because with your life being so tumultuous and so many hard, tough times, beautiful times on the other side, it's like, I was curious what was like the deepest, the one that touched your heart the most. So thanks for sharing that. So,
of course.
So now we're going into the Insta Over 50 group. I definitely want to talk about this because you keep growing your Insta Over 50 group on Facebook like wildfire. So I want the listeners to know what this group is a little bit more about. What do we do in our Insta Over 50 group?
Well, from the beginning of the interview, you mentioned about me just getting out there and doing it. And that's been my mindset from the time I was young, is I just need to do it. And so I started my blog, I got on Facebook. Facebook is familiar. I know what to do with Facebook, and I grew my Facebook page. And I got on Instagram and sort of hacked at it for 6 months and had maybe 300 followers, and I kept looking and looking and looking for other people, not just women, other people over 50 using Instagram. I found a lot of 30-something-year-olds, lots, and their posts were all about their babies and their children, and I think that's wonderful because I love babies and children, but I needed more of, let's talk about gray hair. Let's talk about unwanted hair, right? All the things that we're going through, empty nests, things. And so I'm just desperately looking for my over 50 crowd. And I thought, well, there's gotta be a group out there, right? And I couldn't find it. So I created it.
Nice.
I said, might as well just create the group. And I call it Instagram Over 50. And it's for those of us trying to find each other, and also grow together, because I believe that I'd like to grow my Instagram account and grow my platform so that hopefully one day I write a book and I sell a book. But I don't want to do it by myself. I want to take everyone with me. And so that's the idea of the group, is that we all learn together. How does Instagram work, and how can we help each other, and how can we support each other? And it's been just phenomenal.
I know through the group, I met so many other amazing women in the group that I would probably, like you said, would have never had the chance to meet, because there's such a sea of people out there, and it's hard to weed through all the ones that don't match your lifestyle or where you are in your life. So it's been a great learning tool as well to see what other people do, or other women in our age bracket do. So I love it.
I do too.
So let me ask you, what would you tell other women that go through tough times, and what can you tell them that how can they move on without feeling guilty or have shame about their past?
The first thing is just own it. Don't pretend it didn't happen. It did. And it happens to so many of us. I mean, things happened. When I wrote about being sexually abused as a child, the number of people that came out and told me the same thing, and the whole Me Too that came out afterwards was really overwhelming. It just tells you that you're not alone. When you write about losing all your finances and things like that, you'll hear so many of the same stories. The one thing I didn't want to share at all, I could write about everything, but this was that I've been married more than twice. That was something I held and kept as a secret and didn't want anyone to know. And I wrote about every single step in my blog, and it gave me so much power. I was able to release it and move on. And I think anything you do, if you can just own it, then release it and move on, and know that tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day can and will be better, then it doesn't matter what happens to you. You'll just go for it.
I like that. That's I think that's great advice, because many of us clamor to the past and not letting go and harboring the shame or the guilt of whatever happened, and make it and own it, even though it may not be what we're responsible for. So I love that advice. And I hope, and I know everybody listening and watching this video will love this advice. And we want you guys listening and watching the video, telling us about your experiences, and give us feedback of what you think Loretta's advice did to you or for you, and helped you move beyond a border or beyond something that held you back. But we want to know from Loretta now, what are the future plans in Loretta's life?
Oh, here it is, January 2019, and I'm already feeling like I'm behind. Isn't that crazy?
Yep.
I think what happens when we get to this age is, there is a realization. I'm going to be 60 this year, and I'm pretty sure that there's less years ahead of me than there were behind me, because I doubt I'll live to 120. So with that realization is also this, I want to get these things done. And I've been saying for years, I want to write a book. I want to write a book. And I've been tossing this around, and I won't write a memoir, because who cares about me? I'm a nobody. So I would rather make it a fiction and make it my story, but I can make it a fiction so that it can be, it'll get across to more people, because I think that's what will get people's attention. Mm-hmm. But I think writing, I'm still trying to figure out the whole Instagram and being a brand influencer or a brand ambassador or any of those things. Making money from this somehow would be really awesome. I'd like to do that. So those are on the table this year. I'm also, for myself, learning how to play the piano. My little piano's right behind me.
Oh, cool.
Don't know how to play. Just going to do it because it's good for your brain. And hiking more and getting outside and moving and being healthy and just finding my rhythm. That's the biggest thing.
I love it. One of the clients I worked with this morning, she said, Heike, this is going to be our best year. And I looked at her and I said, yeah, we're going to leave crap behind from last year. all health issues and God knows what, it's going to be a great year. And I just loved when she said that. And you're just like, yeah, it's going to be a great year. And I have all these amazing things I want to do.
I think so. I used to say to myself all the time, whatever you believe, you're right.
Yeah.
So if you believe that things are hard, if you believe that time, this is a bad time, or this is difficult, or I can't do this, or I can't do that, then you're right.
Yeah.
And if you believe it's going to be great, you're right too.
Going to be a great year. And that's what I want. Positivity. That's what we want. A positive outlook on life. Because that's what we're all about. Is being a positive attitude with a positive people around you and living life to its fullest. I mean, you're 60 this year. I'm going to be 58 this year. So I'm not far behind.
Yay! I'll let you know how it goes.
I mean, none of us feel like we're 60, whatever 60 means.
Right. I think it just is as this sort of number. Even my granddaughter, when I said I was going to be 60 this year, she was, wow, Nana, that's old. She's only 7.
Well, in your lifetime, yes.
Right. And I decided that old is whatever 20 years older than me is, no matter where I'm at. So I'm not old until I get there, which I will never get there.
Yeah, you never know.
Yeah.
No,
Well, you mentioned about positivity, and I really wanted to just piggyback on that really quick, Heike, because I have found social media has turned out to be such a great tool to find like-minded, positive women, especially my age. I'm inundated with these wonderful, beautiful souls that are every day out there rooting for me, rooting for the other people, rooting for themselves. And that has changed my life. I have to say, I love that part. And the Instagram over 50 group is that, So.
Yeah, I was surprised too how positive it was. I was a little hesitant at first, but I was like, this is great. I love it. This is positive, supportive. And everybody, when you start a new project or you have something going on, everybody pats you on the back and supports you virtually. So it is truly amazing.
Yeah.
But I want people listening and watching the video know how they can reach you. So tell them where they can find you.
Well, we might also start with Instagram. I'm on Instagram at Loretta's_countdown to 60. I actually just changed that. It was countdown to 60, but I wanted to add my name. I just felt it was important to add my name to it. So Loretta's, like as in Loretta Sayers, _countdown to 60. And my blog is The Countdown to 60. I'm on Facebook as Loretta's Countdown to 60. I've got my Facebook group, Instagram over 50, and I'm everywhere else.
So we'll put all those links in the show notes, because I know when you're like sitting there, you're going, what was that? We're putting all the links in the show notes. So all you have to do is click and you can reach Loretta and read her amazing blog, get to know her better, maybe even interested in joining the Instagram over 50, or find her on Instagram, where we all seem to be hanging out these days.
Yep.
So I want to thank Loretta so much for being here, sharing her stories, sharing her life story and her experiences. It was wonderful to have you.
Thank you, Heike. I really appreciate the interview. I love your podcast and so enjoy it. So I'm very honored to be a part of it. Thank you.
My pleasure. So I'll see you soon, as we call it, on the thread.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So there you have it. Wasn't this an incredible interview? I hope you enjoyed just as much as I had interviewing Loretta. So many interesting stories, and I hope you share your story with us, either on Instagram or here on the podcast. We love to hear from you. Give us feedback. And I'll see you next time on the Pursue Your Spark podcast. Ciao.